Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to this encounter, rencontre de l'agroalimentaire, where we will be talking and discussing about the role of marketing and consumer studies in consumer behavior. We would like to start presenting ourselves first, briefly. We are Claire and Irene. We are two students and we're currently in our second year of a master in languages applied to commerce and to international affairs in the fields of gastronomy and agribusiness. And we've been collaborating with Eva Quispel and Camila Ramos for this encounter. They are second year students of an international master in physiological and psychological food choice determinants, and we all have been curious about knowing your perspective on the role of marketing and consumer studies in our daily food choices. That's why we invited on one side Juliana Melendrez Ruiz. She's a scientist gastronomist. She has a master's in food science and agriculture, and she's almost done with her PhD with a thesis about French consumers' representations and attitudes toward pulses. And on the other side, we have Marianela Santoyo with us. She is an experimental psychologist. She has a master's in neurobiology and neuroscience, also with a master's degree in P2FOOD, physiological and psychological food choice determinants, and currently a PhD student focused on the mechanisms of flavor perception in the human brain with a normal weight population and suffering from obesity, comparing French and Mexican population. So thank you. Thank you for accepting this invitation. Welcome again.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you too for accepting this invitation. And so we'll be guiding you through this conversation. And so we'll start with the first question that is about marketing. So, Juliana, you have an admirable background with food and gastronomy, and we can imagine that you've learned lots of different aspects of the food industry. And you, Marianela, you are a psychologist dedicated to studying brain activity and humans' flavor perception. So how would you link, both of you, how would you link your professional backgrounds with marketing? Have you had an approach to marketing from your field?
So I will start. Thank you so much for this invitation. So to answer your first question regarding my background and marketing, yes, I have had experience in marketing in the way that, for example, in some of the studies I have carried out, I have mixed different methodologies from sensory science, marketing, and psychology. And in this sense, we use for example, we use sensory science to understand the behavior and food choices regarding the extrinsic characteristic of the food product. And we use psychology to understand the process behind those food choices and behavior. And we use marketing to understand, for example, if those food choices satisfy the needs of the consumer and if it is applicable on the marketplace. So that's how I think I have combined the different aspects in my research, more in ones than in others, but it's something that we use and recently we are encouraged to try to use different methodologies to understand to answer one research question, and I think that's what I have been doing during the past years.
So for my part, I consider myself as a neuroscientific. So mostly from almost 10 years of career, I would say that I've been lucky to understand how a cognitive state is linked to a biological marker. So for me, even if I am not expert in marketing and consumers' behavior, I consider that studying cognitive processes that are linked to this branch of the science, such as decision taking, memory, reward, emotion, attention, I think that could I have some clues of how we do what we do, and maybe if we don't understand the why, we can see the what is going on in different levels of research, since the molecules, like neurotransmitters, are doing things with pharmacological approaches. We can speak about brain networks, circuits, or maybe we can actually see what the people is doing. We can really see the behavior. And as psychologists, we are lucky to have ask questions to the people. Why you do this? Sometimes we are amazed that people could say because of this, but they are not really fully aware that there are some internal mechanisms, some of them called subconscious or irrational, but they are really strong. So I think once again, my neuroscientific background could be really related at this study of human behavior linked to the human cognition.
Yeah, I agree. It would be very interesting to know, like, in every choice that we make, like, what happens. I mean, it's not at all what we do in our masters of Irene and I, and it's really interesting to know that it's not just random. You know, it's very something that is, like, I would not say that we don't have a choice, but it's what our brains does, and it's really interesting. So thank you for your answers.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you, Claire. It has like a scientific background, and it can be supported from psychology, from neuroscience. Yeah, it's very interesting.
From what we have studied and what we see as consumers, we notice that there are a lot of different marketing approaches. And of course, there's neuromarketing, which is very much based on the scientific evidence, as you've mentioned, and very focused on the decision-making part and the subconscious. So what aspect of neuromarketing would you think could be highlighted or very much applied in the food industry specifically?
So I'm not an expert in neuromarketing, but from what I know, and in related with food science, I know that neuromarketing is a mix between psychology and also neuroscience and also marketing, and it's kind of a new research field that would combine different disciplines to analyze consumer behaviors and try to understand those behaviors and decision makings. And I think that regarding to food, there has been different research techniques that have been implemented to study aspects such as attention, memory, and emotions related to a food process of consumption or a moment of food choice. And those techniques, they can be, for example, one that I use is eye tracking. Eye tracking measurements. But I know that there are others like skin conductance or EEG that Marianela will know more about. And I think that one positive aspect of this neuromarketing is that it relies more on the physiological and biological responses rather than the explicit responses that consumer can make. And I think that's one of the challenges we face when we are trying to understand consumer behavior, because we know that when we ask directly to consumers, we could not have like the best answer, because there could be some bias, such as the social desirability bias. Answer a question, if you think about it, is a complex is a complex mechanism. I mean, there is memory involved, there is attention. People need to take into account what they're saying to adapt to the person that is asking. So it's not that easy to ask directly to consumers. And I think these new techniques can give us some input about a behavior that maybe asking directly we won't able to see or to explain.
And do you think those techniques are a valuable addition or maybe even a replacement of the traditional investigation methods?
I think it's an addition because from what I have done, combining different techniques allow us to have a better understanding of a behavior. So that's why I'm convinced that if we combine them and to try to understand the same, question, it will give us more input, and at the same time, it will allow us to make more clear what we found, or for example, trying to explain what we found on the eye tracking with the a food choice questionnaire. It's that kind of combination that can help us, find the right answer.
Okay, thank you. And what is your viewpoint in this, Marianela?
So if I make a link between neuromarketing and food, I think that I will go for emotions. Emotional arousal for me is straightforward answer that is not allowing the entire cognitive part starting working. So as Juliana said, the neuromarketing aims to understand what is going on about this subconscious, irrational, this something that is going on and motivate us to do something. And what I really like to say is that one advantage of neuromarketing is that because it's using tools that are scientifically speaking hard, so we cannot lie. So for me, it's like a detector of what is really going on. And then, of course, we can compare with questionnaires. But what is really interesting, and I got this experience by working with animal models, is that animals, we can, if we are speaking, for example, for rats, for rodent models, they are really straightforward. If they are hungry, they go and they eat. If they want to sleep, they go and they sleep. If they have needs, basic needs, they just do it. However, we can model this behavior if we change context. And this is what is going on with humans. We act more in, we are likely to act more of the context before, even though we have emotions, even though we have something that is really more primitive, saying what to do. So for me, it's really interesting, this consumer science, because we can answer the questions of what is really going on just before the behavior is presented. And in the example of the eye tracking, EEG, fMRI, we cannot lie, and we cannot, as experimenters, we cannot change that. We have to stick into the scientific rigorous that if this neuron did something, we cannot change and say, no, maybe because something else. No, is a neuron working, is a neurotransmitter release, is a change in the bulb. And contrary to the neuromarketing for me is using all these answers to obtain these insights of why the consumers are doing, as Juliana said, by adding questionnaires and asking people. But once again, I'm sorry to say, people, we have this tendency to to deny that we are not the masters of our behavior. We like to say we are in control. And my question is always, are we a puppets of our neurons? Or are we really mastering our neurons and telling our neurons what to do? So for me, the key thing about the neuromarketing and food, it could be, yes, the study of these not biased things going on in ourselves before expressing a behavior.
Thank you, Marianela, for your answer. It was really interesting to know your point of view. And when you were talking about that this kind of tools related to neuromarketing doesn't allow the participant to lie about a behavior, and because they are more like straightforward, I just thought about my experience in this case with the eye tracking. And one of the things that we observe and that we took into account, and I think is interesting to mention, is that for these tools to work as those implicit measures or methods, it is important that participants are not aware of the real objective of the study. Because once they know what you are trying to understand and what you want to know about, they will change and adapt their behavior to give you the the behavior you are looking for. So I think that's one of the things that we have to take into account when we're working with this kind of measurements, and I think it will be important for further studies.